I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking to Glenn Petruzzi. Glenn is an experienced minister and church planter, and he's got the world on his mind. He was a missionary to Albania, then planted a church in Portland, Maine, and now he's working in the Boston Church of Christ. He's got a dream to win the world with the gospel, and today he's going to talk about that dream. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I'm looking forward to this interview with Glenn Petruzzi. He is a very, very spectacular person, just a go-getter from the get-go. I met him in 2019 at a conference in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Just a very passionate person, and he's done an amazing job in Portland, Maine, and then was a missionary to Albania. And every time I talk to him, I come away with so many ideas about world evangelism and a passion for the lost that I absolutely love. So I think you've got a lot to look forward to. Hope you're having a great fall. We're heading into the Christmas season, and I just want to wish you every Christmas blessing. Hope you're with your family this holiday season. Hope it's been a great year for you, and you're starting to think about next year and how you can make a difference for Christ. It's going to be a great year. I want to thank you for just taking this time to listen to the Rob Skinner Podcast. I've been really touched recently by all the support. People like JJ and Trinity Griffin who supported the program. I really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. And for others who've just been so supportive, really, really means a lot to me throughout this past year. And if you feel like you're benefiting from the program, I'd like to ask you to support it with a gift, because your support enables me to multiply disciples, leaders, and churches and inspire others to do the same through this podcast. All you need to do is simply just go to the show notes, and there's a link that all you got to do is just click on it, and that'll support the program. Glenn, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
You know, we got to meet at the 2019 Look Up conference, at the Small Church Leadership Conference in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. I think that's the first time I'd met you in person. I think I'd seen you at another conference. You were looking for volunteers to go with you to Portland, Maine or something, or college students or something. You're a big recruiter, but it's been a little while, probably at least 5 or 6 years since that time. Let me just dive right into this. How'd you become a Christian?
Well, it was 1996, and I was playing basketball in New York City. I was playing basketball in college at University of New Hampshire, and I was going over to see my mom in New York City, and was at NYU taking a class and playing in some leagues to just get better. My coach told me to go to these leagues. They were in Harlem and the Bronx. They were pretty competitive leagues, and I was playing basketball in the gym, and a brother saw me dribbling the balls, doing my drills, and he came up to me. He kind of felt called by the Spirit to share his faith with me. I had pretty weird drills back then. I was jump roping and dribbling with 2 balls, and probably made him look at me like, what is he doing? And then he kind of decided to come up to me. He just boldly went up to me and invited me to church. I thought, wow, what courage this guy has. And I wasn't really searching for God, but I came that Sunday, and he followed up with me and came on, that Sunday, and I was blown away. I went to the New York City church, Manhattan, and first time I went to a church that was like full of young people, full of life, and started studying the Bible, and 3 weeks later I was baptized.
Wow.
Then I went back to the University of New Hampshire, and it was a very different ministry because Manhattan was kind of full of young people, and in Portsmouth UNH Durham, New Hampshire was a smaller church with a lot of older people at the time, and so it was definitely a big change. And I went back there and kind of had to make a decision: either I'm gonna get eaten alive on this campus, or I'm gonna have to try to convert this campus. And
Mm.
so I decided the second, and it was really good for my faith to not be in a big church, to be in a smaller church, to be my faith just was, it was a special time of being tested, um, being the only student on campus, and seeing that ministry grow from one. And I just kind of had to have my own faith, had to be a self-starter, had to seek God in a special way. And then everything else I've done so far has been a lot easier than that. It's been like, just to be able to realize, like, in the bigger churches, sometimes you have this all this like inspiration around you. But when you're in a smaller church and you're one person on a campus, it's you got to get your inspiration from someplace else, which is God.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a special time. It was a special time.
Wow.
It was like my sheep herding time.
Yeah.
Like David. No one was watching. I was out there just doing it, and I had a great guy who was discipling me, was the ministry leader, and we saw some great people become disciples on that campus, and people going to ministry, and it just was awesome. And then I got called down to Boston to be in the ministry when I was a junior. I remember calling Randy McKean up, and he didn't really know me, but he kind of knew me. And I said, Randy, give me Dartmouth, New Hampshire. Just give me 10 people, and I'll go plant that church. And he was like, I don't know if we're ready to do that yet, bro, but oh, you go in the ministry. And he just gave me a job on the spot on the phone right there and there. And we had spent some time together, but I remember just being so excited about um, just souls being saved and people coming to faith. So for me, that's how I became a Christian, and that's kind of my development early on. It was
That's
definitely
awesome.
a pretty testing time, but a
Now,
good time.
now looking up, doing a little background research, I found your name on the roster at UMass Boston in 99, 2000. I was looking for
Yes,
no stats at all, but your name is there as and put up as a guard. So I'm like, I wondered if he played there. Is that you, or is it a different person?
that is me. Yeah, yeah. So I would play at UNH. Then when I got asked to come down to Boston, it was a pretty wild story because I was in the ministry. I was kind of training in the ministry, and I went to a basketball game on the campus that I was taking some classes, finishing up, and I was in the middle of a game watching. And at the time, the guards weren't playing that well, and I was like, man, um, maybe I can reach out to some of the players. Maybe I can work out with them. So I went up to the coach after the game, and I said, hey, you got any more room for practice? I'd love to. I played at UNH, and now I'm here in the ministry training, not really kind of doing something else differently now. I'm just finishing up. I'm a senior. Do you want a practice player? And he said, we don't really do that. But do you want to try out for the team? And I was like, it was just mid-season. And I'm like, sure. And so then I started playing on the team mid-season, got on the team, and we and then starting, and they called me the Rev. That's what they called me on the team, the minister. And for about a year and a half, I played for UMass Boston. It was so much fun, and led that ministry while I was a student. So it was kind of a fun time.
So you
That's
actually played. You got some playing time.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was a starter, starting off guard. Yep.
Well, you better
Yeah, yeah.
tell them to update your stat
I
profile.
know. I know. Well, that was so long ago, bro. It was like, 2000. That was before they even had anything.
Hey,
But
it still matters, bro. It still
yeah, yeah.
matters. You got to show,
It's all good.
you got to be able to show your kids.
That's right. That's right. That's
Okay,
right.
so you moved to Boston in what's that, 98, 99? A couple of years after you'd become a Christian.
99.
Okay.
Yep.
How'd
Yep.
you how'd you meet Danielle?
Oh, that's a great story. I just became a Christian. We had this Madison Square Garden service and I was in New York, and she was in Boston. And so Boston came up, and we met together and had this big service together. And I met her real quick because this sister was just inviting people around. I met her real quick, and then we saw each other in the campus ministry. She was at Connecticut, and I was in New Hampshire, and I just enjoyed talking to her. And then our first date was actually in Paris. There was a KCC conference, the Kingdom Campus Conference, and the last night we hadn't seen the Eiffel Tower yet, and it was probably like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I said, "Do you want to go to the Eiffel Tower with me?" And we brought a group of people with us, which was great. And I remember, yeah, our first date was at the Eiffel Tower, so that's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, never forget that.
No, never forget that. Yeah, that was a special moment. And then for some reason in France at 11 o'clock, the trains shut down. I didn't know they stopped running. I thought it was like New York City, like 1, 2 o'clock.
Right.
So I thought we had plenty of time. And then I hear on the intercom, the trains have stopped. And so we were like 3, 4 miles away. So we just walked home. Uh, so yeah, I got extra time with Danielle. I just remember it being so real, so beautiful, so real. And then a year later, uh, at a Boston conference, that's when I really started saying, okay, this I gotta see if this girl likes me like this. And so
Mm,
we started dating pretty shortly after that.
that's awesome. When did you guys marry?
We married in 2000, which is a great year to marry because you always remember your anniversary real quick.
Can't forget.
Uh, you don't have to do the math. It's quick. You know what I mean? We got married and yeah, I guess we have our relationships on tall buildings because I asked her to be my wife, um, at the Empire State Building. So that was it's funny how I saw that movie Sleepless in Seattle, and I
Hmm.
thought I got to do this. I got to invite. It was like 2 months old in our dating relationship, and I was watching it. I had it in my mind. That's how I'm going to ask her. So that
is
worked out
is
nice.
there an observation deck at the Empire
Yeah,
State Building?
yeah, yeah. And it used to be a lot easier to get up there. Now it's like you have to go through this metal detector and stuff. In the back in the day, in 1999, 2000, you could just get into a elevator and go right up.
Oh, that's odd. Yep, pre 9/11, I guess.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. How about kids? You guys have any kids?
Yes. We have three boys, 20, 17, and 13. One is Josh. He's 20. He's at UMass Boston, which is funny. He goes to the school that I went to for a couple of years. And he's a sophomore there and loves the campus ministry there. And then we have my second 17-year-old. He's a disciple as well. And he is in the team ministry here. Um, he's a good junior. He wrestles, and then my other son, Manny, he's 13, and he was in seventh grade, and plays hoops, and it's a charismatic young lad. So
That's great.
we
Yep.
tried for the Yale bro, but we couldn't do it. We tried,
Tried to have a girl. Yeah,
couldn't do it.
you don't see that too often. It just seems like there's lots of combinations of girls in the kingdom, but that's great. Poor Danielle. I bet she really wanted that girl.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to say it. Poor Danielle. Poor Danielle.
What's your middle son's
And
name?
Noah.
Noah. Okay. Awesome
Yeah.
names. Okay. So give me an overview. Where you been since those days, since you got married 2000? It's been 24 years. I
Wow.
know a little bit about it, but give me the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, 24 years. Wow, that's pretty wild. You say that, it kind of hits you, man.
It
24
does.
years. Um, so we when the Zillmans and Millers and Petruzzis all got asked to come to Boston together. And so that was a special moment. That was also with the Mitchells. So it was the Mitchells, Zillmans, Petruzzis, and Millers. And it was some of the most fun ministry. We did Boston campus together. so many incredible memories with those brothers and sisters. And I mean, it was just a dream. It was awesome. So we spent kind of 2 years there, and then we were asked to, my dream was always to go to Europe and plant a church there. And my ultimate goal and dream was to go to Rome and plant a church there.
Mm.
But we weren't ready to do that, so Randy asked us to go to Albania, which was Eastern Europe country, about 50-60% Muslim. And Sajan and Lisa Sharma planted the church. We kind of followed up with leading the church there. We were 24 years old when we went over there, or 23 actually, which is pretty wild. And yeah, it was pretty wild going over there. You just young, you don't know anything, get off the plane, and you know nobody.
Mm-hmm.
You've never been there before.
Mm-hmm.
And the church was awesome. It was an amazing time there. We stayed 2 years there in Albania. The church grew a ton. It had we had some national leadership that we left behind, and then obviously that was during the letter. And then basically, it was wild. It was like a little incubation time where it was just it was like first century Christianity there. Just lots of people coming out, simple Christianity. It was beautiful. The people there are beautiful. And then some money ran out in Europe, so we had to come back. As well as the major litmus was, or the major catalyst was that Danielle's mom was getting sick, and so we came back to Boston to be with Kevin again, and we led the campus together. Kevin and I and our wives, and that was a blast. We saw so many amazing things happen. So many people go in the ministry. It was a revival time. The campus was rough when we got there, but God really did some great things, and that was where the Jesse Gomans and raised up, and he was a freshman at UMass Boston. UMass Boston, man, it's a good school. Lots of leaders come out of there.
That's where my wife went to school, UMass Boston.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So then we were there for, I guess you would say, 7 years, and then there was an opportunity to go to the church planting in Portland, Maine. And in 2010, we went there with 9 people. It was awesome. It was great. It was such a faith building time. Learned a lot, struggled, fought, uh, and saw great things happen. That's where our third son was born, which is cool. And loved the church there so much, and saw some great things happen there. And so encouraged about the church being self-supported and really doing well now, and still growing and under the LaFrance's leadership. But then in 2000 and I guess 21, we felt like it was time to come back to Boston. So it's funny. I've been to Boston 3 times now, which is interesting. Go out, go in, go out, go
Mm-hmm.
in, go out, go
Mm-hmm.
in. Sort of I guess that's our rhythm. And so we lead the Northwest region now, and we've been here, I guess, for 3 years now. And been a blast being with my best friend, Kevin and Melissa, and it's just so much fun. So we miss Portland though a lot. I have to say, miss the disciples up there, and miss life up there.
So why did you return to Boston? Why did you come back?
I think I just felt like I think the like just the whole aspect of what are we going to do with the world, reaching the world.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to be in a church that has the connections and resources that kind of could and the relationships. Like, Kevin and I go back, so it's like we're like we work really good together, and I wanted to be around people that, I have about 20 more years, 30 more years. I mean, I, my family lives pretty old, so maybe I got more than that, but uh, pretty healthy. But, I could definitely take the Tom Brown approach to life, and be very happy with that. But I just, 20, 30 years ministry left. I was like, where do I want to be? I want to work with the right people. I want to be in a place that have relationships for my kids, the teen ministry, as well as the surrounding crew. I just felt like we could do something. We could change the world together. And I thought Boston was the place to go for that at the time. And so it was a move, and it was a tough move for my kids. My kids didn't love it at the time, because their life was basically in Portland, Maine,
Hmm.
and it was hard for our family the first couple of years. And now my sons are kind of saying it was good that we moved, but
Right.
you know how that
It does
with your
take a
kid.
little while to adjust, that's for sure, especially when they're older.
Yeah, yeah. I had a junior in high school,
Mm.
and then an eighth grader, and then uh, you know a fourth grader, third grader. So it's tough. It was like their friendships,
Exactly.
Uh, but I'm grateful for their resilience through it all.
Okay, so let's talk about this because this is kind of at the heart of why I wanted to talk to you today, Glenn. Is you've got a dream to see the world evangelized. I think many of us would love to see that happen, but this is something that is certainly driving you. Talk to me about what is it? Okay, what is driving you, and what's your plan? Like, what would you like to see happen?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think from the beginning, I've always thought to myself, I want to die, and I want to say that the whole world, every person on the planet had a chance to hear God's word. And I still believe that. I still believe that it's possible. I still believe that um, it's a mandated command by God. And I don't know if it can happen in one generation, but I need to try because that generation is going to die off.
Right.
And so loving people, and I know there's a lot of feelings about, why do that? Why not just be in your local ministry and just reach the world there? And I do believe that's a special thing and that's a needed thing. And I think not everyone um, feels always the way I feel, but I do think it's a command by Jesus in Matthew 28 to go make disciples of all nations. And that word means all people groups, not just all nations. So some people
Hmm.
say, "Oh, we're in all nations," but there's 17,000 people groups, and you know, it's a lot of research has been given. There's about 7,000 people groups that don't even really have a knowledge of Christ in this world, that are in what they call the opportunity zone, which is like in the middle of the world. Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist people who it's about 3.2 billion people that don't have never really heard of who Christ is. I don't think if you ask them who is Jesus, they would probably say, I don't know. I've met some of these people because they're Cambodians in Lowell. And I said, what do you know about Jesus? And they just came from that country and, that one of those opportunity places, opportunity zones, they call it. And all I know about Jesus is his mother, Mary. That's all I know. I said, what did he do on the cross? I don't know. And this person had been in the country for 4 years going to college. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, then you look at the statistics that the evangelical churches put out. In some places like Afghanistan, 2% of the country knows even a Christian, knows who, like, do you know a Christian? 100 out of 100 people, 98 people would say, no, I don't know a Christian. So, and that's just a Christian. That's not necessarily someone who is even teaching the right things.
Right.
So that I've been kind of boiling on that lately. I've been thinking about like John Wesley when he said, the whole world is my parish. I think that's kind of how I feel. And, I feel like I appreciate the brothers and sisters that came before us that went for it and tried, and we've learned a lot from them. and we've learned a lot of things that we could do maybe in a more healthier way, but it doesn't take away from the dream. And so that's kind of what was really deeply in my heart. This summer, I got with a bunch of brothers, and it wasn't anyone that important, but we came together and we said, how do we evangelize the world? If there was no obstacles and there was no naysayers and everybody was on board, how could we do this? And we took a whole day and we just prayed and brainstormed. And it was one of my favorite days of my life because we came up with some incredible ideas. It was just, some of the most creative people I know uh, in the Boston area. And it was just like so inspiring. And I know we don't have all the answers. We got a lot of issues in Boston that we need to grow in. We're not perfect. We're sinners. We need God. We're not God's gift to the world. Not even close. I wake up every day needing Jesus, but I think God was watching and said, hey, those are some people that are trying to think about how to do it. And then from there, some great doors have opened up. So I don't know. It's just kind of cool to dream again, to think about that again. And we came up with a plan that actually is not crazy. That's feasible. That's not like out of the question. And that was the most thing that was really inspiring, is that it was possible. The early disciples, the apostles, they didn't have social media, they didn't have planes, they didn't have trains, they didn't have any money. They were persecuted royally, and they reached the ends of the earth. And I'm like, if those guys can do it with less resources, more obstacles, more challenges, why can't we? So that's been lately what's been getting me to do that. We came up with like 10 ideas, that big ideas of how to grow the church. And what our thought is, we're going to start doing that in our family of churches. We're going to do that locally. We kind of said, let's be a petri dish in the New England family of churches in Europe. Let's just try these ideas and see what sticks.
Okay.
And
So let's break it down. Give me the bullet points. What'd you take away from that day of prayer and fasting?
yeah, well, a couple things. The first, I think, is near and dear to your heart, is that, we have 533 churches that are under 100 right now. And I so appreciate the work you do, and your wife and the rest of the people on that committee, to help the churches, the small churches. Those are the churches that grow the fastest. I believe one of the best moves we did was plant churches between 2000 and 2024. Over 200 churches were planted, which is incredible. But we have a leadership deficit right now, we know, and that's challenging, right? We have a lot of baby boomers retiring. And so that was primarily a great amount of leaders in our movement that
Right.
kind of now are retiring. Guys like Randy, who is in Hawaii right now, so happy he's there and he's enjoying. He certainly deserves it.
Someone's got to
But
save those people.
yeah, right. But I think one of the things that is challenging is just that these churches have been stuck, right? And so in our family of church, in Europe, there's, I believe we wrote down 22 churches under 100. In New England, we have 5. And so Ed and I just recently took a trip to Albania, which was so much fun. And we came up with an idea, even with the Midwest, with Clint Lahr. Um, he used to call it the Centurion Club, but Centurion's over 100. And so to get together on a monthly basis with these brothers and sisters who lead these churches under 100, and each month come up with innovative ideas, and with a mixture of a devotional to help these churches to grow and to try these ideas out that we came up with. So I think one of the first things is we got to gain our confidence back of of seeing these churches go over 100. If we do that, we grow by 60% in our churches. And most likely that, the 100 mark is a good mark for self-supported. We
Hmm.
also free up 20 to 30 million dollars of um, mission fund, if that makes sense. If these churches can at least support one or two ministers, let's say 40 million is throughout the world in our churches, maybe um, in missions work, right? What we can do with $20 million, what can we do to plant new churches? And once we know how to get these churches past 100, um, we'll be able to do it again.
Hmm. Okay,
So
so
that's the
what you're
first one.
saying is step one, get all the churches that are under 100 over 100. It will free up money that's being used to kind of keep them on life support, and that money can be diverted to planting more new churches.
And the most important thing, more than the money and more than freeing up these churches, is we've learned something that we can use forever now. It's almost like once you are able to do something, we have a muscle memory that we'll be able to do again. So that's a part of it too, is that I think we're afraid to plant churches because we realize we have a lot of babies out there that are still needing food, And so it's almost like a ministry that doesn't have leaders. You convert a lot of people, and then people start getting shy about baptizing more because they're like, oh, it's going to be more work for me. You know what I mean? And so that's the thought, is in New England and in Europe doing that. And so we came up with some innovative ideas to get these churches above 100. And one of those ideas is social media. That this is the new Bible talk. This is the new bus ministry. This is the new soul talk. This this is it. I mean, I know I share my faith with people all the time, verbally, but it's a fishing hole that is powerful. And you obviously Stuart Maines and his comms team have done a great job with that. Um, if we just duplicate what they're doing in the small church, you could see 10 to 15 to 20 visitors every week coming in the doors with 2 to 3 months worth of just building the online presence, right? And it's not rocket science. You get a Google account, you you get an address of church, you put a little money into it. And what I mean, like $400, $500. Then you start pumping Instagram and TikTok. And, right in my region, we have 20, 30 visitors coming on Sundays that never met anyone. They've been looking for a church, they're seekers. And right now, I think this is going to end my thought. It's crazy to say this, but in Boston, with 2,000 members, they've been able to reach 30 million people with 2,000 members
Wow.
online. So what's crazy is, and this is I hate to say, I'm spoiler alert, 30 years from now, we have 1 million disciples, which you think, oh, how are we going to do that? Well, if you grow by 8% for 30 years, which I know is a lot, but if we're growing these churches, like if you just did it with the, smaller churches are able to grow like that, even if we could have churches like what happened in Tucson happen in the first 3 years, that would be easy to reach, or even Portland the first 3 years. But to be able to get 1 million disciples, if we just took and we're not even close to doing it really that well in Boston. We're still like kind of at the bottom of what we can do. But if we just duplicated what we did in Boston, as far as reach, meaning like for 2,000 people, you reach 30 million people. So if you take math and you say, okay, a church of 50 then reaches not 30 million, it reaches that same sort of ratio. Does that make sense? Then if you think about 1 million disciples, this is where it gets exciting. If you do the math, it comes out to 45 million, um, 45 million, 45, 45 billion reaches. I know that's kind of crazy to say. So 1 million 45 billion reaches.
Okay, so
So
what you're saying is based on the leverage of what you're seeing in Boston. If the kingdom could grow to 1 million, we'd be able to reach 45 billion through the power of social media and the network there.
yes, and
Okay.
that gives, 30 years from now, there's going to be probably 10 billion people on the planet. So that gives, just online, that gives 4.5 chances to 10 billion people. That's just online. That's not, what's 1 million people outreach? What can that do in this world? I think that's another whole thought, right? The connections, the thoughts. Right now, when we share our faith in Boston, we meet people on the street and they're like, I know you guys. I follow you guys on Instagram. And you're like, whoa, that's cool. Like, and they know about our services, but they haven't visited yet. And you're like, oh wow, now they're like, this is God. I gotta come, and you're like, wow, I didn't know that you were checking us out before I even met you. So to think about that, you realize, how do we reach these 3.2 billion people in this opportunity zone? You realize, man, how do we reach these people?
Mm.
Social media. Like, we can reach these people. And I did a stat, 93% of this world owns a smartphone. So the church can reach, and I'm not even like a techie guy. I just see the value. When I see opportunities as an evangelist, I have to jump on those
Right.
opportunities.
Right.
I have to ride the wave. So that's sort of the thought, is like, wow, this is doable, especially when you think about the reach we can have, in these places. So a church of 15, 20 people can have a huge outreach and could have more visitors on a Sunday than they have visitors. Forget the one for one
Right.
on Sunday. You could have 10 to 1. You could have people, and you put a little money into these things. We've been experimenting. We have this family day we do on in Lowell, Easter Sunday. We just put a little money in it. We pump it. We post, and people are coming that we don't even know. So we talk about evangelizing inside the church now
Mm.
and outside. And it's been super inspiring. So there's so much to talk about, but that's one of the big ideas, is getting the churches that are smaller, learning how to do that. And one of the ways to do that is to leverage social media. Time is the small churches leaders' biggest problem. Time. How do I maximize my time? How do I work smarter, not harder?
Right.
They usually have so many things, so many hats they wear,
Yep.
And so sharing your faith can often be, something that's hard to keep going, right? It's something we have to focus on. But even when you focus on it, it's hard to even have the impact. I go out and share with 100 people, maybe 3 people, 4 people will come to church. I still go and share with tons of people, and I still outreach, but it's like having another net that's available to us. And I think this is a way that we can help the small church leader. If the small church leader could have a team of people that are comms in their church, doing the simple things that anyone can do, visitors will come. If you build it online, they will come. And this was some of the things we came up with that were really exciting. And I have other ideas, but that's one of the
That
bigger
was great.
ideas.
Okay, so number one, rebuild the confidence. Try to get churches to 100, which is awesome. Two, use the tool of social media. Okay, you said there's like 10 ideas. Could you quickly go through the rest of the 10 so we just kind of get an overview?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you can, if you have good questions, you can ask. Um, Another idea was, and some of these ideas are things that probably you've thought of, other people have thought of, but they're exciting. Um, is the aspect of reaching 10,000 cities. So there's 10,000 cities in the world that are between 10 million to 200, 300,000 people. Okay. 10,000 cities. When you think about the 6-year plan, the other day I was in the Chance of a Lifetime meeting, and I asked them, who knows the 6-year plan? And what was really convicting to me is that no one knew it. These are the leaders of our youth. And if you ask them, what's the 6-year plan? They don't even know what it is. And so what struck me is that we certainly don't have a worldwide vision in
Mm-hmm.
our fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
And we need something inspiring.
Right.
We need something that reaches people. And so I don't know what the slogan will be. I don't know what we're even thinking of it, but 10,000 cities inspires me.
Right.
And right now we're in about, 1,200 cities, 1,300, maybe even 2,000 cities if you kind of extrapolate different geographic areas.
Right.
How do we plant 8,000 more?
Right.
Well, money is an obstacle. So oftentimes what I realize is that, and this is what I learned in Portland, innovation comes from limitations. So like if you have limitations, and I think sometimes we can get really upset about limitations. I know I did. I want to get an intern. I want to get a, church building. I want to get this. This will help the church. And oftentimes I've thought like, why can't you just say yes, and all that stuff? Because I think, I want to do my job and I want to see it happen. But what I realize is that that's a blessing that I have limitations. And so the fact that we don't have enough mission money to hire everyone and do all that stuff is actually a blessing. And the reason I say it is because I read this book called 4 Hour Work Week. It's an interesting book by Tim Ferriss. And it's about Tim Ferriss, who's a brilliant guy. And he basically claims that I can teach you how to have a business and work 4 hours a week doing it. Now, it's a crazy book, but it made me think, this guy, Tim Ferriss, he's using his time in a way that's probably like, I mean, it's fun and it's exciting, but boy, it's wasting time. He learned flamingo dancing in Brazil,
Right. Right.
learned how to kickbox and be the kickboxing champion. So he
Mm-hmm.
spent all this time learning these things, learning languages, doing all these things. And he's figured out a way to leverage his time 4 hours a week in order to have a business. There's never a better time to train 1,000 tent makers than right now. I would love to go into ICMC, bring a bunch of business people with me who know how to run businesses, know how to do different things in different fields, who figured out the secret sauce, who spent maybe all their lives learning a business, learning a leverage, learning a tent making role, if that makes sense. And they've learned all these things and they're able to teach, I'd love to say, train in the ministry, but like Paul, learn how to leverage your time so that in 10 years, you don't need any support. So you have 10 years to train in the ministry. And this is not for everyone. This is for people that I think are ambitious, right? I mean, the Bible says Paul worked harder than them all. You were a tent maker, bro. You know what it's like. But imagine if you started earlier, Rob. Imagine if you started in the real estate space
Mm-hmm.
when you just got in the ministry
Right.
and you were mentored by a real estate guy who really knows his stuff. And you had real estate people under you making deals while you trained in the ministry. And you built this business up so that to a point where you only have to work 4 hours a week. Then you have the freedom to do whatever you'd like to do with submission to leadership, with absolute humility. I think that's a huge part of this tent making school. Humility, submission to leadership, that we will submit no matter what. Even though we could go to Rome, we're not going to go to Rome until we get the blessing, you know. But to train 1,000 people that have the ambition to go in the ministry, but also do it without paying, have the church supporting them.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Think about 1,000 people in our movement, and there's got to be 1,000 people
Oh yeah.
that want to do this.
Yep.
You save the church $2 million, $3 million of support over the course of your lifetime. And you can go plant churches anywhere at any time
Mm-hmm.
anytime you want.
Yeah.
And the church doesn't have to support you in your salary.
Mm.
Whoa, that's a huge idea that I'm grateful we don't have enough money for. If we started this in 10, 15 years, we have 100, then that turns into 200, hundreds with 300. We have the freedom to plant churches quicker
Mm-hmm.
without the limitation of money.
Yeah.
So that's another idea.
That's a huge one. I mean, being a tent maker, that's gotta be. I mean, people like Gary Simmons, who leads a church in Fresno, he's been a teacher for a long time and has led the church. I think about um, John Oakes in Merced, planted a church in his retirement, and he's self-supporting, able to get a church off the ground. I mean, it just opens doors when the money factor has been taken care of, when that's set aside. It just enables things, and so that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I think this is a kind of a funny idea. This is what happened in my region, which was kind of cool. There's a lot of Cambodian disciples that a big Cambodian population in Lowell. I think it's the third or the second largest Cambodian population outside of Cambodia,
Hmm.
right? So we've been converting these people, and they're like, I want to tell my family back home about the gospel. This was organically happening before I even showed up in the Northwest Mission Center. And they started a church in this village on Zoom.
Hmm.
And they've baptized, I believe, 10 people
Wow.
from this virtual church planting of reaching relatives in the other country that they're from.
Hmm.
Now there's a church of 10, and they're connected to the Cambodian churches. And so they planted a church without the local church doing it. So I call it plant a church virtually from your zip code. So it's kind of like the Decapolis project, when I call it the Decapolis project, when the demon possessed man told 10 cities, he just went home and he was first told, go tell your family all that the Lord did for you. So go tell your family. That's the first step. And then from there, you get disciples who maybe you don't have to be the teacher. You can just get, you have that local person in the church there who speaks the language. They can interpret for you or translate for you. And you start a Bible talk, and then that starts into a church. So now every Sunday, there's two church services a couple of these brothers and sisters go to. They go to the one at 9 or 8:30 a.m. that's in Cambodia, and then they go to the one in their um, you know, our church, like the local one in Lowell. So
Okay,
that if we all did
so the
that,
service there in Cambodia is Sunday evening apparently, and
yes, yes.
so okay.
So and it's crazy to see already what's happened. But I thought, well, what if we did that in all of our
Wouldn't
churches?
that be awesome? I mean, it just gives you that natural drive to reach your family. That's why we planted a church in Ashland, Oregon. It's just got to reach the family. I mean, it's a powerful driver for sure. It's really, really important. That's a great idea.
Yeah. Kingdom entrepreneurship is the another one. I think plant a church. One of the things that I was really frustrated about in Portland is I had 60 people sign up for the mission team. And man, they were fired up to come to Portland, Maine. I was like, we're gonna have 60 disciples here. Little did I know, in 2010, that was a tough job market. And I have to say, the frustrations I felt in Portland were the blessing because they gave me all these ideas later on
Mm.
that I thought, oh my gosh, thank God that only 9 people came because it made me realize how important having a job is on the mission field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Having a job is what lay leaders they absolutely need to have. And so instead of just planning a church, you plan a business that can provide jobs for the church planting.
Mm.
So, for instance, my buddy Matt Pierce, he has this. Um, he calls it an envelope. Um, it's called the Pierce Company, and it's basically washing windows and washing buildings and having buildings kind of manicured essentially over time because they especially in New England, the snow, all the stuff that hits them. And so he has this business that's sort of I would say it's a pretty like basic business. It's accounts with buildings and workers that work those buildings, right? Or for instance, I have a behavioral health kind of company with behavioral health, right? And so you these kind of businesses that are transmittable to other countries, right? Because everyone needs window washing,
Mm-hmm.
everyone needs building upkeep. So if you took that business, and I know there's obstacles in getting to countries and taxes and issues like that, but if you could get that business into that country and provide 20 jobs, you could grow the business and the church at the same time. And then maybe even start bringing maybe 10% of the business goes into further missions. And so there's a thought that like planting a church in a business could be a very powerful thing. Plus, you also are able to get into the community a little stronger. And we've seen that happen with restaurants and different things that are going on. But if we were more intentional, it could provide people jobs because a lot of people want to go, but they said, where am I going to work? What am I going to
Right.
do?
Exactly.
So that's another idea. Um, I think one of the things that this is a little bit interesting is um, this is a little more controversial. I'm going to say it, but the ICC. There's a lot of our brothers and sisters in the ICC, and I think at some point in time, being able to connect with them and dream with them and say, "Hey, we want the same things you want. You know, we're not lukewarm. We're excited about doing this.
Mm-hmm.
We're excited about going after this. Unite the clans,
Mm-hmm.
like we're stronger together than apart. 10 years ago, you were with us,
Mm-hmm.
you know us. It's not like we have these relationships still that are there. And so thinking about restoration churches, and that's where I think without a mission, without a dream, without a world evangelism, something bigger than us, it does unite us
Yeah.
because we all want that. And
Exactly.
it's similar minded people, that could be something that could really help produce greater reach.
Okay. So those are great, some great ideas. You've been a small church leader, both in a foreign context in Albania and then in Portland, Maine. You were converted while you're living in a small church in, is it Portsmouth, New Hampshire?
So New Hampshire, yep.
Okay. So you have a heart for the small church. Now you're in a big church. Looking back, okay, what would you tell a small church leader who's like, okay, that's great for you. You've got tons of money, you've got unlimited resources, you've got mega millionaires supporting your missions outreach, you've got this missions program, but I'm struggling just to make budget. I'm just struggling to maintain my membership, let alone grow. What would you what would you say to a person who's leading a small church? What could smaller churches or smaller churches replicate? Just take away
Hmm.
from what you're seeing in Boston. What advice would you give to that person?
Well, we have a group that we've sort of been doing. It's been kind of a organic grassroots group. It's sort of like the Centurion group for under 100 people, but we call it Double Trouble. That's what we call it. And the whole thought is whether you're a church leader, whether you're a ministry leader, whether you lead a region like me, how do we double our ministries? How do we think bigger? And I like the word double trouble, the phrase double trouble, because Elijah was called a troubler of Israel. And not that we want to cause trouble, not that we want to be disunified, But double trouble gives you the thought that status quo is never going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So meaning like, don't accept uh, well, first I would tell the small church leader, you're my hero. And it's the hardest job in the kingdom of God
It is
to lead
definitely.
a small church.
Oh yeah.
I've done it, and it's hard, it's lonely, but what it does for your faith
Mm-hmm.
is special. Coming back into Boston, I go into this region and I'm like, look at all these amazing opportunities and resources. Like, I see, because I've been trained to look for opportunities, ministry is so much easier now for me because I see opportunities all over the place because I was forced to in Portland and
Right.
forced to in Albania.
Right.
So I think the couple bullet points I would tell is, first, it's important to get mentored by someone who's done it before,
Mm-hmm.
or mentored from somebody who is supporting you.
Mm-hmm.
So getting mentorship, like anything, gets you there quicker. Um, and what it is get mentored by someone who think can help you grow
Right.
spiritually first,
Right.
and then also your church. I think the second thing is, don't accept the solutions big churches give you.
Mm.
I know it's funny saying this. My wife is like, Glenn, just be careful what you say on the Rob Skinner podcast, because be spiritual. I was like, thanks, babe. But what I mean by this is that in the big church, you can't do it like we do all the time, because it's not the same monster. It's not the same thing. You're you're trying to bring something out of nothing. There's similarities,
Mm-hmm.
like social media. That is, the small churches have to get trained in social media. Like, it has to be a part of being sent out. Like, I think it has to be part of every small church's DNA to get your social media engine or train really rolling, because it's going to make growing so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to leverage your time.
Right.
And so, like, I have my buddy Steve LaFrance, who leads the church up there. I said, Steve, invite Stuart or Nick Petrie up to Portland, put them in a beautiful, room, give them some lobster, and sit at their feet and duplicate everything they're doing,
Right.
and then consult with them afterwards. So that's what Steve's going to do. And he's already starting to see visitors come from online, which is great. But the online ministry is huge. I think, secondly, um, you need horses. Horses. I call them horses. People that are able to, maybe we would call it harvest workers, right? That are uh, leaders in your church that have time and faith to grow your church. Um, I'd say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing you did and expecting a different result.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like the beginning of the year. I remember being in Portland. Okay, this year's going to be awesome. We're going to do great. And I'm looking at my plan from last year, and it's the same as this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking there's going to be a different result.
Right.
Now, there's nothing wrong with sticking to the program and staying the course, right? I believe in that. But after a while, you have to pivot. And so for us, interns was an important part of growing small churches. Like, getting uh, interns that could be $1,000 a month, $800 a month, that can help grow the church with you. Do a campus, do a
Right.
team, do
Right.
a pros. Um, I would think another idea would be, and this is the big churches. I would talk to the big churches. I believe it's the big churches' responsibility just as much as the small churches' responsibility to see the small churches grow. Now, I think there's a sense that there's certainly in the past, that's gotten weird, right? We oh, you know, are you over us in the Lord? And we don't want that. Certainly we don't want that. But we want to work together and we
Right.
want to support you.
Right.
And a lot of these big churches support the smaller churches. So, for instance, an idea thought of is like if you spend 7 years or 10 years or 15 years supporting a church, that's a lot of money that
Hmm.
you used to do that. But if you said, hey, we're going to take 3 years and it's going to be one of our mission statements in Boston to see Portland get to 120.
Hmm.
That's going to be one of our mission statements. And that's going to be one of our goals. So the big churches making it a part of their plan, not just their local church. And I think that if it's not received right from everybody, how do I say this? If small churches don't want that, then totally we have to be respectful of that. But if a church does want that, okay, what are Santa Claus is coming to town.
Hmm.
What are your top 10 things you need in your small church to grow
Right.
it?
Right.
We need a teacher. We need this. We need that. We need some interns. Hey, we're going to try to see that happen. We're going to try to be innovative and get a group of people that will help you get 5 of those 10 things done. You
Right.
know what I mean? So I think that part of it is that there's a disconnect from the big churches and the little churches. Like, I don't know how to say this, like growing your contribution, growing your church. If we had the same expectations in our big church that we had in the small church, just net growth, you would definitely be challenged. We'd be challenged in Boston, because even though we've had a great year this so far, we know what it takes to grow the contribution. We know what it takes to grow even just 5%,
Right.
4%, 3%.
Exactly. Exactly.
So to have a little bit of um, I guess there's some of the big church leaders don't quite understand what it's like to be in a small church.
Right. Exactly. It's
So
a different mentality. I mean, you're just doing so many more things as a small church leader. Your your bandwidth has been narrowed so much because you are getting the church service ready. You're making sure people are showing up to do communion, to pass trays. I mean, you're literally doing everything, and you're having people yell at you because, oh, you didn't tell me that I was doing communion. Yeah, I did. I reminded you 3 weeks ago, but it's so many little crazy things. And then you got to prepare the budget. I mean, I could go on and on. This is super helpful. First of all, get mentored. Make sure that you're in a discipling relationship. Number two, get trained. Um, Find out. Really learn how to use social media. Is what you're saying there. Don't accept solutions that the large church has given you. Get the training you need. Figure out what you're going to need. Don't think about it from an old perspective. And then third, you need workers. You need people that are excited about the mission, like a subset of your church that shares the passion to grow with you and work with you. So having interns in that's awesome. Well, Glenn, let me go ahead and just ask you this. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? You've got these big dreams, big plans. Are you going to go back and spearhead some church plantings? Are you going back overseas? Are you going to get involved in Revive EE? Are you going to go help Sean Wooten and plant the church in Athens? Or what are you doing?
I don't know, bro. I don't know that question. I need my wife and I to talk about that before I say something tremendously radical. But I guess the best way to say it is, I want to stay with my best friend Kevin Miller as long as I can.
Okay.
That's my first thing. And I think I joked about it with him is 2032. I'm going to be empty nested and as well as kind of be, um, our kids will be established too, like in their colleges or wherever they're going, most likely, God willing, right? So that'll be a big year, 2030, 2032, probably 2031, 32. That will be a big year for us to figure out what we're going to do. And I love Boston. I wouldn't mind staying there for the rest of my life, but I don't know, bro. I think part of me feels like no one's thinking about the world. Meaning this, it's so hard to think about the world when you're focused on your thing, your church. Like there's so many issues in my region alone that I have to think about, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can you even have the brain space to think about 10,000 cities?
Sure.
And so I don't know. I don't know what to say in 10 years. What I would like to do is to be someone who strategizes how to plant 10,000 cities.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to be a part of starting a tent making ministry. I'd like to be a part of um, putting these ideas to practice
Okay.
in in our family of churches. And I don't quite know what that would mean. I don't
Right.
know,
And that's totally fine. I mean, it's just it's you know,
like
The
leading a big
Lord's going to
church.
determine
I
your
think
steps.
leading a big church is a great honor. It'd be a great honor to lead a big church. I think it's a hard job. It's not an easy job, but I don't know if I want to do that
Mm-hmm.
because it 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 has a huge impact around the world. But I also think it takes up so much brain space
Mm-hmm.
that um, like I'm always thinking about other countries. I'm always thinking about it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's how I'm built.
Yeah.
I love to travel. I love to go. I love to do stuff, and kind of shows me that the last three, I've been in and out of Boston 3 times
Sure.
for a reason. So I think that's probably something that I would want to discover is how do I get to do something like that where I'm that's what just makes my blood,
Right.
just
Gets you up in the morning. What are you involved in Revive EE? Are you helping out at all in the European missions
yeah,
at this time?
I help right now I help with fundraising and Revive EE. So I'm part of that. I get online with Sean and the team, and we always raise lots of money through letters, through outreach. And it's cool. We've hit our goal every time. It's amazing. Everyone's been able to go every time, which is
That's
God.
awesome.
I think another thing I'm doing recently is I'm helping the church in Albania get revived, and a lot of great things are happening with that. I just took a trip with Ed there, and that was super inspiring to see the disciples. 14 years I hadn't seen them, and got off the plane. They were crying.
Mm.
It was like we didn't miss a beat, and we I saw their teens. That it's so wild to see their teens
Wow.
that look like them. There's 20 teens in a room, 20 unbaptized teens that are just so hungry for God. And it was so encouraging to see the opportunities in that city in Tirana. So I'm a part of, hopefully, by God's grace and power, seeing that church um, be one of the first churches in Eastern Europe, other than Ukraine, that's over 1,000 disciples.
Mm.
That I think if there's a country that has potential to grow that fast, is Albania. Like in one year, there was 90 baptisms.
Wow. What's the current size of the church there now?
Right now it's 30.
Okay, it's 30. So but it has the capacity to grow. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the challenges what they sent uh, because of capitalism coming in, about 60 or 70 people moved out of the church um, to other countries. So what a huge hit that was. So like America was handing out visas to the Albanians, and the Albanians, a lot of Albanians are in our American and foreign, other outside of Albania churches. So that was, and some of these people were like the major leaders. So that's been challenging because, but there's a new Tirana, the city's a million people. It's one of the youngest cities in Europe. So I could just see the youth there's a campus of 40,000 people there. There's a huge teen ministry. potential there. And I went to a church that was another church there that was over 1,000. And it was inspiring for me to go to that church and to get a vision of what Tirana can be. Yeah, anyways, so
That's
that's what I
awesome.
recently.
That's awesome. To close, what advice would you give to a person who wants to make this life count?
It's a different advice probably than most people would say, is get a life plan. Um, a couple years ago, I read a book called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and another guy. And it's basically it's a book that you read and then you spend a day coming up with your life plan. It's a powerful exercise. And, basically, I wrote my life plan about 5 years ago. And in the life plan, you have different areas of your life, like family, spirituality, these kinds of things that you're you're kind of saying, where am I at now? Where do I want to be? Right. And every 6 months or every quarter, I review that life plan. And it's so inspiring to see God just doing these things, and I don't quite know what it is, but like it's a powerful exercise. And so much will come out of you when you do this exercise. So the first part of it, it says write your eulogy. I was like, what? And so I wrote, like, what do I want people to say at my funeral?
Mm.
And I what came out of me, it scared me. Like I was like, oh my gosh, this was in my heart. This is what I want. Like, I guess I never knew, like, that's what I want. That's why I feel God calling me to. And I think writing a life plan is so important because if you're going to the store, if you're going to a destination in your car, you always put an address in. You have a
Yep.
GPS, your car. If I jumped in a car with you, Rob, and I said, you said, where are we going? I said, I don't know. We're just gonna drive around and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You might say, oh, that sounds cool, but after a while, you most likely would say, okay, Glenn, please drop me back at my house. I have things to do.
Right.
But in life, we take that approach. We don't have a destination that we want to be at. And so we drive around aimlessly, even as disciples. And so getting a life plan, and you don't have to do it the way that the book says it, but it's a great book called Living Forward. And it really was life-changing for me. The Spirit working through that exercise
That's awesome. That's great.
really think about my life.
Absolutely. Well, Glenn, thank you so much for your time. And I love your thoughts about winning the world. I go, we need more dreamers like that. I love your quote when you say, no one thinks about the world. I know there's someone who is thinking about the world. That's Jesus. That's for sure.
Amen.
But we need more people who are thinking on a broader scale rather than just our own personal situation. How can we reach this world? That's what inspired me about our movement as a young Christian, is like, hey, we're going to make a difference. We're going to make a dent in this world. So I love the fact that fire is still burning inside of you, and I hope it just burns ever brighter. Thank you for the good work that's happening in Boston. It's so encouraging. And for your care and concern for smaller churches. We need that. And smaller churches need to step up and continue to grow. We really are the engine of growth for the future. So thanks so much for your time.
Great being with you, Rob. You inspire me.
Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, let your friends know about it. Let people know about the Rob Skinner podcast. Secondly, read and review one of my books, How to Plant and Grow a Church, or Courage, How to Make This Life Count. You can find them both on Amazon. Super easy to download, or you can order the paper version. Finally, support the program with a gift today. The link is in the show notes. Because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no-regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day, and make this life count.